Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you never imagined they could quietly take your entire life away without stealing a single dollar? I certainly hadn't. The woman who emptied my future wasn't a stranger. She wasn't a scammer. She wasn't a criminal I'd never met. She was my own daughter. The day I walked into my bank, I thought I was there to withdraw a little cash for groceries. Instead, I discovered that I no longer had the legal right to touch a single cent I had spent a lifetime earning. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was discovering how many people already believed I was losing my mind and realizing someone had been preparing for that moment for months. I thought I knew exactly who had betrayed me. I was wrong. Because before this was over, I would uncover a plan that reached far beyond my own family, and the one person everyone expected to stand against me became the only person who could save everything. This is the story of how my daughter tried to erase me while I was still alive, and how one quiet decision changed both of our lives forever. The first sign that something was wrong wasn't an argument. It wasn't a phone call. It wasn't even a letter. It was a machine. I stood in front of the ATM outside Hawthorne National Bank, inserted my debit card, entered the same 4 numbers I'd used for years, and waited for the familiar sound of cash being counted. Instead, the screen flashed a single sentence. Transaction declined. I frowned. That had never happened before. I tried again, same result. I checked my balance through the menu. Nothing appeared, only another message. Please see a bank representative. At 72 years old, I've learned that machines rarely panic. People do. So I slipped my card back into my purse and walked inside. The young teller greeted me with a smile. Good morning, Mrs. Hawthorne. Good morning. I think there's a problem with my account. She scanned my card. Her smile disappeared. I'm sorry. What is it? I'll need to ask my manager to assist you. That was unusual. Very unusual. For nearly 40 years, I'd banked at the same branch. Everyone knew me. The manager, a polite man named Owen, appeared a moment later. Mrs. Isaacs. Hawthorne. He looked uncomfortable before he'd said a single word. Would you mind stepping into my office? The door closed behind us. He turned his computer screen toward himself, typed something, stopped, typed again, then removed his glasses. I'm afraid I can't process any transactions. I don't understand. He swallowed. According to our records, his voice almost disappeared. You are no longer authorized to access these accounts. For a second, I honestly believed he'd confused me with someone else. I'm Rosalind Hawthorne. I know. I've owned these accounts for decades. I know. So why can't I access them? He looked genuinely embarrassed. Your daughter submitted updated legal documentation. The room became very quiet. My daughter? Yes, Corinne. My only child. There must be some mistake. I wish there were. He turned the monitor toward me. There, in black and white, was my name. Below it, a restriction notice, and beneath that, Corinne Hawthorne, authorized representative. My eyes remained fixed on the screen. What exactly am I looking at? A financial protection request? I never requested protection. I understand. No. I looked directly at him. I don't think you do. My husband, Sterling, used to say that money reveals character faster than success ever will. He wasn't talking about wealth. He was talking about control. Who trusts you? Who doesn't? Who thinks they deserve something that isn't theirs? Sterling had been gone for almost 3 years. Heart attack, quick, peaceful. The kind of passing everyone hopes for. The kind that leaves everyone else picking up pieces they never expected to carry. After his funeral, I continued living exactly as we always had. Same house, same routines, same bank, same Sunday. Lunches with Corinne and her husband Declan. At least, that's what I believed. Now, I wasn't sure how long I'd been living inside someone else's plan. I'd like to see the documents. Owen hesitated. I'm not permitted to release them. They concern me. I understand. Then print them. His eyes drifted toward the hallway. I can't. Why? They require authorization. From whom? Another pause. Your representative. I almost laughed. My representative? He nodded. Corinne, there are moments when anger arrives like thunder, loud, immediate. This wasn't one of them. This was colder. The kind of realization that spreads slowly through your chest, like stepping onto frozen water and hearing the first crack beneath your feet. When did this happen? 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks. I'd had lunch with Corinne 4 days earlier. She'd hugged me goodbye, told me to call if I needed anything. Then she'd gone home, knowing I no longer controlled my own finances. I left the office carrying nothing except my purse. Outside, sunlight filled the sidewalk. People hurried past with coffee cups. Someone laughed across the street. The world looked exactly the same, only mine had quietly changed. As I reached my car, someone called my name. Rosalind. I turned. It was my neighbor, Judith. She hurried toward me with genuine concern. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so glad to see you walking. I smiled politely. I usually do, she frowned. I mean, after everything. What everything? Her expression shifted. Confusion. You don't know? Know what? She lowered her voice. I heard your condition had gotten much worse. Condition. What condition? The memory problems. I stared at her. I don't have memory problems. She blinked several times. Oh, I thought. She stopped herself. Who told you that? She hesitated. I probably shouldn't say. Judith. It was Corinne. The words landed with almost no sound, yet somehow they echoed louder than anything I'd heard inside the bank. My daughter hadn't only taken control of my accounts, she had started rewriting my life. And before the day was over, I would discover she wasn't the only person who believed I was slowly losing my mind. Judith looked genuinely embarrassed. I'm so sorry, Rosalind. Please. I forced a smile. Tell me exactly what Corinne said. She hesitated. I don't want to make things worse. I promise you won't. Judith lowered her voice. She said your memory had started slipping after Sterling passed away. I remained silent. She told us you sometimes forgot where you were. Another lie. She said you were becoming confused with money. Money. That word caught my attention immediately, not because it hurt, because it explained something. This wasn't random gossip. Every rumor had the same purpose. Memory. Confusion. Money. I thanked Judith, got into my car, and drove home without turning on the radio. Sterling always used to tell me something whenever business partners started acting strangely. People rehearse lies long before they need them. At the time, I thought he was talking about contracts. Now, I wondered if he had been talking about families. My house stood exactly as I'd left it. White columns, red brick. The oak tree Sterling planted the year Corinne was born. Everything looked peaceful until I unlocked the front door. There was an envelope on the hallway table from the bank, addressed to me. Opened. I frowned. I never opened my mail before breakfast. I turned the envelope over. The seal had already been sliced. Inside was a notice informing me that several changes had recently been made to my accounts. I had never seen it before. The date at the top stopped me. 9 days ago. 9 days. Someone had opened my mail, then placed it back inside the house as if I had already read it. I slowly looked around the hallway. For the first time in years, my own home didn't feel entirely mine. I carried the letter into Sterling's old study. Very little had changed since he passed away. His favorite fountain pen still rested beside the ledger he never finished. The leather chair still faced the window overlooking the garden. Sometimes I sat there simply because it made me feel as though he hadn't completely left. I unfolded the bank notice again. Someone had highlighted one sentence in yellow. Authorized representative successfully added. Highlighted. Not by the bank, by someone inside my house. I suddenly remembered something. Sterling had never trusted ordinary filing systems. He believed important papers should always leave clues. Not obvious clues, tiny ones, invisible to anyone except the owner. I walked toward the filing cabinet, opened the drawer containing our financial records. Every folder looked perfect. Almost. One folder leaned slightly forward, barely half an inch. Enough for Sterling to notice. Enough for me to notice because I'd watched him organize that cabinet for nearly 40 years. I opened it. The documents were there. Property taxes, investment statements, insurance policies. Nothing appeared missing. Then I checked the final sleeve. Empty. It had once contained certified copies of my identification documents, passport, birth certificate, social security records. Gone. Every document someone would need to prove my identity had disappeared. My phone rang. Corinne. I stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. "Hi, sweetheart." Her voice sounded warm, natural, comforting, exactly the way she'd sounded every Sunday for years. "Hi. How are you feeling today?" There it was. Not "how are you?" "How are you feeling?" "As well as ever. I'm glad." Another pause. "I was thinking maybe you shouldn't worry about driving so much anymore." I walked toward the window. "Why not?" "Oh," she laughed softly. "You've seemed tired lately." "I have? I've noticed little things." "What things?" Silence. Then she changed the subject. "Would you like me to stop by tomorrow?" "No. I can help organize your paperwork." My grip tightened around the phone. "My paperwork. You've always hated dealing with bills." That wasn't true. Sterling handled investments. I handled every household account for 45 years. Corinne knew that, which meant she wasn't speaking to me. She was rehearsing, building a version of me that other people would believe. "I appreciate the offer. I insist. I'll manage." Her tone remained gentle. "If you say so." Before hanging up, she added one sentence that stayed with me all afternoon. "Don't forget to take your medication." Medication. I wasn't taking any. By early evening, I stopped pretending this was simply about access to a bank account. Someone had entered my home. Someone had intercepted my mail. Someone had removed my identity documents. Someone had convinced neighbors I was becoming mentally confused. And all of it pointed toward one conclusion. Someone wanted the world to believe I could no longer take care of myself. The question was, why? The next morning, I drove back to Hawthorne National Bank, not to argue, to observe. The lobby was unusually quiet. Owen recognized me immediately. "Mrs. Ezierville." "Hawthorne, I'd like to ask one question. I'll answer if I can. When my daughter filed those documents," he nodded, "was she alone?" His eyes drifted toward the floor. "No." My heartbeat slowed. "Who was with her?" "I'm sorry. I can't disclose customer information." "I didn't ask for customer information." He looked back at me. "I asked who walked into the building with my daughter." Another long silence. Finally, there was an attorney. An attorney. That wasn't surprising. The next sentence was, "and someone from our executive office." I frowned. "The executive office?" "Yes. I've never seen him visit this branch before." "Who was he?" Owen hesitated, then quietly said something I never expected to hear. "I believe it was the bank president." I stared at him. The president of a regional bank doesn't personally attend routine paperwork, not unless the paperwork was anything but routine. And before noon that same day, I would discover that someone inside the bank had been waiting for me to come back. I spent the next 20 minutes sitting in my car across the street from the bank. I wasn't frightened. I was thinking. Sterling had built a successful business by refusing to react emotionally. Whenever something didn't make sense, he'd ask the same question: who benefits? Until that morning, I'd assumed the answer was obvious. Corinne. Now, I wasn't so sure. A bank president doesn't personally oversee paperwork for an ordinary customer. Not unless the customer, or the paperwork, was unusually important. I locked my car and walked back inside. Owen looked relieved to see me. "I was hoping you'd come back." That surprised me. "You were?" He nodded. Someone asked me to call him if you returned. My pulse quickened. Who? Instead of answering, he looked toward the elevators. The gentleman is expecting you. Expecting me? I had never requested a meeting. I had never called anyone. Yet someone upstairs already knew I was coming. Owen led me to a private elevator that required a security key. I'd banked there for almost 4 decades. I had never used it. The elevator stopped on the executive floor. The doors opened onto a quiet hallway lined with dark walnut paneling and framed photographs dating back almost a century. The atmosphere felt different from the busy branch downstairs. Slower, older, like stepping into another era. At the end of the hallway stood a woman in a charcoal suit. Mrs. Hawthorne? Yes. Mr. Pembroke is ready for you. The office overlooked the entire city. Tall windows, dark wood shelves, no unnecessary decorations. Only books, family photographs, and a single grandfather clock quietly marking the seconds. An elderly man stood near the window. Perfect posture, silver hair, navy suit. He turned as I entered. For several seconds, he simply looked at me. Then he smiled. Mrs. Hawthorne. His voice was calm. I've been waiting for you. Not, I've been expecting you. Waiting. As strange as this may sound, he continued, I was beginning to wonder if you would ever walk through that door. I frowned. You know who I am. I've known who you are for nearly 30 years. That was impossible. We had never met. At least, not that I remembered. He invited me to sit. Neither of us spoke immediately. Finally, he folded his hands. My name is Alistair Pembroke. I know. I also knew your husband. The mention of Sterling immediately changed the room. You knew Sterling? We met many years ago. I don't remember you. He smiled gently. I would have been disappointed if you did. That answer only deepened the mystery. I was a junior financial analyst. He paused. Your husband attended a meeting at our headquarters. I searched my memory. Nothing. There was an accounting error. I corrected it. No, he shook his head. Your husband corrected it. Still nothing. Alistair noticed my confusion. You probably never heard the story. I didn't. He saved my career. Alistair stood and walked toward a bookshelf. He removed an old leather binder, placed it carefully on the desk. I've kept this for 27 years. Inside was a faded photograph. A group of young employees standing in front of a newly opened bank branch. Near the center, a much younger Alistair, standing beside Sterling. He discovered that another executive intended to blame a financial reporting mistake on me. Alistair smiled faintly. Your husband could have stayed silent. But he didn't. He insisted the board investigate. What happened? The truth came out. And you? I kept my job. He closed the binder. I've never forgotten. For a brief moment, the tension surrounding my own situation faded. Sterling had always helped people quietly, without expecting gratitude. Apparently, some people never forgot. Alistair's expression became serious again. Mrs. There's again. Hawthorne, I cannot discuss confidential banking matters unless you authorize me. You have my authorization. He slid a document across the desk. I signed it. Only then did he open a second folder. Its contents made my stomach tighten. Photographs, account summaries, internal reports, colored tabs, dates, everything carefully organized. This file concerns activity involving your accounts. My accounts? Yes. He looked directly at me. I'd been reviewing it for almost 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Exactly when everything had begun. Why? Because something about it felt. He searched for the right word. Manufactured. Manufactured. Not illegal, not fraudulent, artificial, deliberate. What did you find? He opened to the first page. Small transfers. How small? Never large enough to trigger automated review. I looked closer. $300, $600, $900, $1,200. spread across dozens of transactions. I never authorized these. I know. You know? He nodded. Because every transfer followed the same pattern. What pattern? They always occurred less than 24 hours after someone called our customer service department claiming you had become increasingly forgetful. The room became silent. Every transfer had been protected by the same story. Memory loss, not coincidence, preparation. Alistair turned another page. This was what first concerned me. It wasn't another transfer. It was a note entered by one of the bank employees. Customer appeared confused. Daughter answered all questions. Another note. Customer preferred daughter to speak on her behalf. Then another. Future communication should be directed through authorized representative. I looked up. I've never been present for any of these conversations. I know. Then who was? Alistair took a slow breath. That, he said quietly, is the question I've been trying to answer. Before I could respond, someone knocked softly on the office door. A woman entered carrying another folder. She handed it to Alistair without saying a word. He opened it, read the first page. Then his expression changed completely. He slowly looked back at me. Mrs. Hawthorne? I believe your daughter wasn't trying to steal your money. I felt my heartbeat quicken. Then what was she trying to do? He turned the folder toward me. On the very first page was a request that had been filed only 2 days earlier. Application for permanent financial guardianship, and my name was printed across the top. I couldn't take my eyes off the document. Financial guardianship. Not a loan, not a transfer, not a power of attorney. Guardianship. There is something deeply unsettling about seeing your own freedom described in legal language. One signature, a judge's approval, and suddenly another adult can decide where you live, how you spend your money, whether you can sell your home, even whether you can buy your own groceries, without ever asking what you want. I looked at Alistair. My daughter filed this? He nodded. Or someone acting on her behalf. When? 48 hours ago. And no one thought to tell me? We couldn't. Why? Because the application listed you as, he hesitated, unable to understand financial decisions. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was so carefully planned. If someone convinces the court you're mentally incapable, no one expects you to object. Alistair slid another page toward me. I think you should read this. It was a written statement, not from Corinne, from a physician's office. The first sentence caught my attention immediately. Patient has reportedly experienced progressive memory decline following the loss of her spouse. Reportedly. Not diagnosed. Reportedly. I continued reading. Episodes of confusion, difficulty remembering financial obligations, increasing dependence on family. None of it was true, not one sentence. I looked up. I've never met this doctor. I know. Then how is this possible? Alistair tapped the page. Notice the wording. I read it again. Every sentence began with phrases like, family reports, according to relatives, concern expressed by caregiver, not facts, claims, repeated often enough to become paperwork. Sterling once told me something that suddenly felt painfully relevant. A lie becomes dangerous the moment someone puts it in a file cabinet. I need to know something. Alistair nodded. Anything. Has anyone actually spoken to me? He looked confused. What do you mean? Has anyone from this process ever called me? He turned several pages. No. No interview? No. No assessment? No. They simply believed my daughter? He didn't answer immediately. Finally, they believed the paperwork. That sentence stayed with me. People rarely trust people. They trust documents. Documents feel objective, permanent, official, even when they're built on carefully arranged lies. There must be someone else involved. Alistair folded his hands. I believe there is. Why? Because this paperwork is unusually sophisticated. In what way? Most families hire one attorney. This involved several offices. He pulled out a timeline. The dates formed a pattern. First, neighborhood rumors. Then, changes to mailing addresses. Then, small account transfers. Then, medical statements. Then, guardianship paperwork. Every step prepared the next one. Nothing happened too quickly. Nothing attracted attention. It wasn't emotional. It was systematic. Someone had spent months constructing a version of my life. That wasn't mine. My phone vibrated. Corinne. Again. I looked at the screen. Alistair quietly asked, "Would you like me to leave?" I shook my head. "No," I answered. "Hello, sweetheart." "Hi, Mom." Her voice sounded almost cheerful. "I've been trying to reach you. I've been busy." "Oh?" "At the bank." Silence. Barely 2 seconds, but long enough. "Did everything work out?" "What exactly do you mean? You know, the account." "It was interesting." Another pause. "I told you I'd take care of everything." There it was again. Not help. Take care of. "As a matter of fact," I said calmly, "I'm speaking with someone from the executive office." The silence this time lasted much longer. When Corinne finally spoke, her voice had changed, only slightly. Enough for a mother to notice. "Who are you speaking with?" "I don't remember his name." I lied for the first time. "He just invited me upstairs." "Oh, I see." No warmth, no concern, only calculation. Then she smiled into the phone, or at least pretended to. "Well, I'm sure it's just routine. I'm sure." We ended the call. Alistair looked at me. She was nervous. So was I. "No." He shook his head gently. "You were careful." He stood and walked toward the window. "I've spent 43 years in banking. I've seen children steal from parents. I've seen parents steal from children. I've seen partners disappear with entire companies." He turned back toward me. "But this," he paused, "is different." "Why?" "Because your daughter isn't acting like someone chasing money." "Then what is she chasing?" he answered without hesitation. "Control." That single word explained everything. The neighbors, the rumors, the paperwork, the missing mail, the medical claims, the account restrictions. Money had never been the destination, it had been the doorway. Just then, another knock interrupted us. The same assistant entered the office carrying a sealed envelope. "This just arrived from legal." Alistair thanked her, waited until the door closed, then opened it. He removed one sheet of paper. "Read it once." Then again, for the first time since we'd met, he looked genuinely alarmed. "What is it?" He slowly handed me the page. At the top was the name of the law firm representing Corinne. Below that, a formal request. They weren't asking the court to supervise my finances anymore. They were requesting immediate authority to sell my home. I stared at the address printed beneath my name. The house Sterling built, the porch where Corinne took her first steps, the garden we'd planted together. The home I believed I would die in. Someone wasn't trying to protect me. Someone was trying to erase every trace that I'd ever lived there. And suddenly, I understood exactly why my identity documents had disappeared. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. I kept staring at my own address. The home Sterling had designed room by room. The kitchen where Corinne learned to bake Christmas cookies. The hallway where we measured her height every birthday until she left for college. A house is never just wood and brick. It remembers birthdays, arguments, laughter, goodbyes. Someone was trying to sell all of that, as if it were nothing more than another asset. Alistair gently closed the folder. "I think we've reached the point where you need to understand the full picture. I'm listening." He leaned forward. "The bank isn't your daughter's final destination." "I know. The house is." I nodded slowly. "But why now?" He slid another document toward me. It was a recent property valuation, completed less than 3 weeks earlier, requested through an outside real estate consulting firm. Estimated market value, just over $6 million. I never requested an appraisal. "No." "I know." "Who did?" "The request came through the attorney representing your daughter." I frowned. Can they do that? They can request an opinion, but they can't sell your property. Not yet. Those two words settled heavily between us. Not yet. Alistair opened another section of the file. I'd like to show you something unusual. Inside were copies of phone logs. Dozens of them. The dates stretched back almost 4 months. Every time your daughter contacted us, he said quietly, she used almost identical language. He pointed to highlighted lines. Mother seems increasingly confused. She forgot another payment. I'm worried she'll become vulnerable. She's no longer comfortable making financial decisions. Different days, different employees. Exactly the same phrases, almost rehearsed. People telling the truth rarely repeat themselves word for word. People telling prepared stories often do. I suddenly remembered something. 3 months earlier, Corinne had insisted on helping me organize old paperwork. At the time, it had seemed thoughtful. She brought coffee, laughed at childhood photographs, spent nearly 4 hours going through filing cabinets. Then she'd asked one strange question. Mom, where do you keep the original property deed? I'd smiled. Somewhere safe. She laughed. I hope so. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now, I realized she hadn't been making conversation. She'd been collecting information. My thoughts were interrupted by another knock. This time, a man in a dark gray suit entered. He carried no briefcase, only a thin folder. Mr. Pembroke. Alistair stood. Thank you for coming. He turned toward me. Mrs. Hawthorne, this is Nathan Cole. Nathan shook my hand. Pleasure to meet you. Mr. Cole heads our Financial Integrity Division. The title sounded impressive. It also sounded serious. Nathan sat down without wasting time. I've reviewed your file. And? I don't believe you're dealing with ordinary financial abuse. What do you believe? He looked directly into my eyes. I believe someone has been manufacturing evidence. He opened the folder. Inside were enlarged copies of signatures. My signatures, or rather, versions of them. At first glance, they looked identical. Then Nathan placed a transparent overlay on top. The differences became obvious. One letter leaned farther to the right. The loop in my surname had changed. The pressure varied. Tiny details. Invisible to almost anyone. These aren't mine. I agree. They're good. They are. But not perfect. My stomach tightened. So someone forged my signature. Possibly. We're still investigating. He pointed to 3 separate documents. These appear genuine. Then 3 more. These concern me. Then another. And this one worries me the most. It was the application to redirect official correspondence, the very reason every important letter had stopped reaching me. I looked at Nathan. Can I ask you something? Of course. If you suspected something weeks ago, why didn't anyone call me? His expression hardened. We tried. I froze. What? He slid a call log across the desk. 8 outgoing calls. Different dates. Different times. Every one of them marked, answered by authorized representative. Corinne. I slowly looked up. I never received those calls. No. Because every contact number on your profile had recently been changed. My heart skipped. I never changed my phone number. I know. Someone had replaced it. Every warning, every verification, every security check had gone directly to my daughter. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something stronger than fear. Resolve. Corinne hadn't simply lied. She had carefully isolated me. 1 document at a time, 1 phone call at a time, 1 rumor at a time. She wasn't stealing from me. She was quietly replacing me. Replacing my voice, replacing my decisions, replacing my identity. I looked at Alistair. What happens now? Before he could answer, my cell phone rang. The screen displayed one familiar name. Corinne. But this time, a voicemail notification appeared before I could answer. She hadn't meant to leave it. I pressed play. At first, there was only silence. Then I heard Corinne's voice. Not speaking to me, speaking to someone else. "Once the house is listed, she'll have nowhere else to go," a man answered. It wasn't Declan. It was someone I'd never heard before. "Just make sure she signs the evaluation papers on Friday." The recording ended. I slowly lowered the phone. Friday. Today was only Wednesday. For the first time, I finally knew exactly when my daughter planned to make her final move. I listened to the voicemail 3 more times. Each time, I noticed something different. The first time, I heard betrayal. The second, planning. The third, confidence. Corinne wasn't worried anymore. She sounded like someone who believed the ending had already been written. She was wrong. Alistair quietly saved a copy of the recording. "This changes everything." Nathan nodded. "It confirms intent." I looked at both men. "What do we do now?" Nathan answered first. "We let Friday happen. You want me to walk into their meeting? I want them to believe nothing has changed." It sounded dangerous. Then again, so had trusting my own daughter. Friday morning arrived with perfect weather. Blue skies, warm sunlight. The kind of morning Sterling would have called too beautiful for bad news. Corinne arrived at my house just after 9. She stepped inside carrying coffee, exactly as she always had. "Morning, Mom. Good morning. You look wonderful." "So do you," she smiled, natural, relaxed. If I hadn't known the truth, I would have believed every expression. Declan waited outside in the car. He waved politely through the windshield. Everything looked perfectly ordinary. That was the frightening part. Some betrayals don't arrive wearing masks. They arrive carrying your favorite coffee. During the drive, Corinne chatted about gardening, a neighbor's new puppy, a television show she'd started watching. Not one word about lawyers, not one word about the bank, not one word about the documents waiting for me. She wasn't nervous. She thought she'd already won. When we entered Hawthorne National Bank, she led me confidently toward a private conference room. "I've arranged everything." "I'm sure you have." She opened the door, then stopped. Her smile disappeared. Inside the room sat 5 people. Alistair Pembroke, Nathan Cole, a court-appointed financial examiner, the attorney representing the bank, and 1 empty chair waiting for me. Corinne looked back at me, then at Alistair. "What is this?" Alistair stood. "Please come in." No one raised their voice. No one accused anyone. The silence carried enough weight. Corinne recovered quickly. There must be some misunderstanding. Nathan calmly placed a thick binder on the table. "I don't believe there is." He opened the first section. "Copies of redirected correspondence." The second. "Telephone records." The third. "Forged signature analysis." The fourth. "Unauthorized account activity." Corinne looked toward her attorney. He quietly began reading. His expression changed with every page. Finally, he removed his glasses, turned toward Corinne, and asked the question she'd feared most. "Why didn't you tell me about any of this?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at me. "Mom, I can explain." I met her eyes. I'd been waiting to hear the explanation. Tears formed instantly, not from grief, from panic. "I was trying to protect you." Nathan spoke before I could. "Then why redirect every security call to your own phone?" Silence. Alistair continued. "Why submit reports claiming cognitive decline without a medical diagnosis?" More silence. The financial examiner asked quietly, "And why request immediate authority to sell Mrs. Hawthorne's residence before guardianship had even been approved?" The room became still. Corinne looked around. There was no story left to tell, only documents. Finally, she whispered, "I thought." No one interrupted. I thought she'd never notice. Those 6 words ended everything, not because they proved fraud, because they revealed motive. She hadn't acted during an emergency. She hadn't made a mistake. She believed I was no longer paying attention. I opened my handbag, removed 1 envelope. Sterling had prepared it years before. Inside was a revised estate plan we'd updated after his retirement. One clause had always seemed unnecessary. until now. If any beneficiary is found to have intentionally acted against the financial interests or personal autonomy of either grantor, that beneficiary shall immediately forfeit all future inheritance. Corinne stared at me. You changed nothing. I nodded. We didn't need to. Sterling had already imagined this possibility long before either of us wanted to believe it. Corinne's attorney quietly closed his folder. I'm withdrawing as counsel. He stood, collected his papers, and left without another word. Declan never entered the room. Sometime during the meeting, he had simply walked out of the bank. Whether out of fear or self-preservation, I never learned. Several months later, the guardianship petition had been formally dismissed. Every restriction on my accounts was removed. My identity documents were restored. Additional criminal and civil proceedings followed, though I chose not to attend every hearing. Some endings don't need front-row seats. They only need peace. I sold none of Sterling's investments. I kept the house. I planted another oak tree beside the first one. Not because I wanted to remember what happened, but because I wanted something stronger to grow where trust had once been broken. People sometimes ask whether I ever forgave Corinne. I tell them the truth. Forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. One can be given, the other must be earned. She emptied my bank account for a little while, but she emptied something far more valuable forever. The privilege of being trusted by the one person who loved her before anyone else in the world. And that was the one account she could never reopen.